When I was in college, I didn't even know what storyboarding for commercial was. I didn't know it was a thing. And I think most of us at the time dreamed of working on a feature film for a big studio like DreamWorks, Disney. And I would have never guessed that after all these years, I would have fallen in love with something so different from what I was aspiring to. But the thing is, storyboarding for commercial is so fast paced and so diverse that you work on so many different things and so many different styles. And I discovered it's a great training ground to improve faster. Um, and I know on the other end, so many artists that work on commercials and they never talk about it because I think there is a bit of a bias in there was a bias in school and there is a bias in the industry toward commercials, and they're felt as less artistic. And I understand why, because there's definitely a good chunk of work that goes toward uninspiring commercials, very consumeristic. But on the other end, what I love about my experience in commercials is that it also a great place for experimentation in a way that you don't see in most kids TV and four quadrant family feature film. Um, and I came to realize what an incredible training ground this field is for story artists, and I think is also for other artists. I think also like designer, probably current designers. Um, and personally, it revealed itself as a very rewarding path. Um, and the main thing I think people don't like is the speed, the fast pace. But to me, that's more of a feature than a bug. I love the fact that I'm never stuck on the same project for too long and I'm always moving on. Um, and just to give you an idea, you even get sometimes 4 6 hours to thumbnail a project and then 1 day to finish it. Of course, like most of them are 30 seconds. But so like you say 4 6 hours for thumbnails, another day to finish it, and then within 24 hours you get feedback from the client and you go back and revise it. And it's not uncommon for one project to have, at least for me, have like 10 different iterations, 10 different versions in 1 week of the same story, and sometimes very different versions, sometimes completely different. It's not just about adjusting a few panels, it's just redrawing the whole thing. And that's between the feedback I get from the client and the feedback I get from directors, because the different passes, right? Like internal pass and then client pass. Um, and I think this idea of just drawing, getting on paper, getting feedback, revise, repeat, and keep going, like reboard, revise, feedback, is really it really forces you to trust your instinct, right? It forces you to access that internal visual library that on longer project you might not have, you might not be forced to do, um, because on longer project you have time to really think and maybe use external resources to access that creative side. But in commercial, you just have to trust the instinct and getting on the page and just keep moving. Um, and the reason why I say it's a great ground, uh, a great training ground for your creativity. The reason why I say makes you grow faster in your creativity, it's because of the volume and variety you face on this kind of field. Because like while long format is more of a um, you have weeks to explore an episode, to develop an episode, or to develop a sequence. Um, Commercial is just a constant sprint. It's always due the same day, the day after. You just have to keep moving. And so, because of that, because of the quick feedback and the quick revisions you keep doing, it's great to understand quickly what works and what doesn't, and you learn to adapt and to move on. and to take what you learn from one project and bring it to the next one. And so like it's almost a time machine, right? Like while in a TV show you get like 6 month and 5 6 episode, so 5 6 project. Like if you consider each episode as a project, in commercials you get 4 or 5 projects in a month, right? Like maybe two, three, and sometimes 4 or 5, right? Depends on what kind of project you're working on. And this quick iteration cycle really builds your creative muscle in a way that I feel longer format doesn't really allow you to. And so in my mind, I like to think of my long format projects as a training ground where I refine and learn my skills, right? Because I have the time to think about what's lacking, and I have time to research and really like improve. Um, and the commercial boards is more like a testing ground to see how much these skills have become second nature because you don't have time to really think about it. It's kind of, if you are an artist and you do life drawing, it's kind of like the difference between 20 minute or 10 minute pose where you really have the time to think or doubt yourself and research the anatomy and really like looking how to design a certain shape of the body, versus the gesture drawing where you don't have time to think. You have to trust your instinct and what you've learned in your longer poses you apply in a quick gesture way, right? um the other thing I love about commercial is the diversity of project you have access to. It's not unusual in a couple months to have work on a 2D project, on a CGI and a stop motion project. You really like move from one to another. And they are all for different clients, and each client has their own aesthetic and their own goals, which really like expose you to a variety of styles, I would say. And in my time working with Hornet, which is like the main studio I work with for commercials, I even got the chance to work on a music video, which is something I never thought I would have, and it was a very different experience than like your normal commercial. And the other thing, you also get to work with so many directors, and every director has their own creative process. They have their own way of approaching the process, and so like some of them have very specific visions, and they're really articulating what they want. Others are have like their thumbnail kind of pass, really sketchy thumbnail pass that they give you to then make a storyboard based on that. And other again, they just give you the input, the key points they think you really need to focus on, and they give you a lot of freedom, and then they work more on the feedback on the after the first pass. And so you learn to adapt, you learn to listen to others, and you start to understand how to better serve someone else's vision, and how to adapt your skills to serve the creative process of someone else. One last thing I love about, at least I find attractive about the commercials work, is that you also work in smaller teams. You have way more access to directors. Even if I know some people work in TV that have a lot of access to directors, it really depends on the show you work on. But in a lot of kids show, you don't really have that constant conversation with your directors, which is my everyday in commercials. And also, I'm often the only story artist on a project, which gives me way more responsibility and a bigger creative impact on the project compared to a show where maybe I'm one of four story artists on an episode, or one of many on a feature film. And that pushes you to mature, I think, uh, as a professional. And also you have way more access to, you work way closer to the other departments. You have a better idea what's going on in design, as you often overlap with other departments, and you start to understand what their needs are and what the limitation maybe on the project is, compared to a lot of TV shows where I never talk to almost anyone in the other departments. Especially if you work remotely on a preschool, for example, you talk a lot with your supervisor, assistant director, and director, but you don't really talk to the design team or the animation team. And all the information you get are through your supervisors, compared to commercials where you get a lot of access and understanding of what the other departments are doing and what the other department need on the project. Um, and because of the smaller size, I think I also feel a lot more appreciated in the commercial space. And I think that's also because, um, I mean, I felt appreciated in the feature film because of the constant back and forth you have with with the director or the head of story. But on TV, I feel a lot of shows you get the feedback at the rough stage, so you get the feedback of what's not working, what you need to improve. But then once you deliver the sorry, I saw like a spider. Once you deliver the cleans, you just move on to the next episode, and so you never get really a feedback or a feeling or of how much they like or dislike your work, compared to commercial where I always get um, a nice word from my director for being fast, for being there for them, even when it's like a last minute revision and they have like 1 hour to deliver. And so like I feel like they really appreciate you being there for this high pressure situation. Sorry. And talking about high pressure, I feel that's, there are some cons about storyboarding for commercials. And I think that's, pressure is definitely one of them, at least one of the one I hear more often from other people. I feel like the joke in the industry is that everything is due yesterday. But to me, that's not so much of a negative, because it's such this intensity lasts just a few days, right? And and then you move on, then you rest or you move to another project. And I actually work really well in high pressure situation. I work better than on long-term projects sometimes. So they really like, I feel I thrive in the pressure. And sorry. And compared to long-term gigs, I never feel stuck because of these like burst of high pressure moments. I feel I'm keep moving. I'm forced to keep moving, and I really like that personally. And the other downside, of course, is as I'm speaking of like a few days of intense work, that implies that it's also like just a few days of paid work, and that makes for a very unstable kind of work, where you get paid for 2 days and then maybe you don't get any work for a week. And I understand why people dislike that and why people prefer to find longer stable gigs like TV for like a TV show for 6 months, or a feature film for a year. But I also see the positive side, which is that because of the instability and because of the pressure and the fact they need you the same day they contact you, and they need the product, the storyboard to be done for the day after, you often run into better paying gigs, um, because they pay for for you, for your ability to be in there, to be reliable and to be fast. So and that's the pros and cons, like the harder is the job, the sometimes better is the pay. The easier is the job, sometimes the lower is the pay. Um, and from my point of view, it's also like a kind of work that it's easy for me to wave into my bigger freelance strategy. So because it's just a few days of work, I'm able to get it in in between like bigger gigs, episodes, you know. So for me, all these negatives are actually not so bad, but I understand why some people might dislike. So yeah, this is my love letter to storyboarding for commercials. I feel it's something that nobody talks about. I feel it's a very undervalued field. And if you found this video interesting, like, subscribe. It's free. It helps a lot. And I look forward to share more of my creative journey and my experience. Ciao.